So I read over your form, and we got a guy with 2 bites here.
Yeah, I never want to admit this on camera. I have like a more accurate history. It's been a while, so I spent yesterday kind of.
Yeah, I read through it. It sounds like, if I remember correctly, 3
Bad ones, yeah.
Yeah. And since the 3rd one kind of just withdrawn, and then you know, a move coming up where, because right now he has like a small circle of 10 people or so. Then of course you're going to move, which is stressful because of his history, right?
Yeah.
And then you've had a few trainers. I mean, he did like a 3-month training program.
It turns out it was 8 weeks.
Oh, 8 weeks, okay,
Yeah.
2 months, okay. Just like a boarding train when he's there and...
Yeah, I was in London at the time, but I think she trained police dogs, but she had him living in her house with him. I don't know exactly, but she said that he was too unpredictable and she couldn't understand when he wasn't gonna bite someone. To be fair, he doesn't always do this when he's super anxious.
The shaking?
Yeah, something like he does obviously sometimes, but it's like he doesn't necessarily present like this right before he's about to bite someone.
Okay. You mean with the stress?
With just like obvious.
Oh, I see. Okay. So go ahead and just fill me in on what you think I should know.
Where to start? He wasn't aggressive until he was like 2 years old.
Mm-hmm.
We had an older French bulldog, and he had an incident like a year before she died where we honestly thought it was her and not him because she was a lot more territorial. And the dog walker, and she bit the handyman. No broken skin or anything, but like obviously a problem. And we had to muzzle the dog in the building from after that, and we were muzzling her, not him. And anyway, then there was no issues. Like they were still, well, she was always fine, but he was fine with everyone in the house, out the house, like putting that aside, no changes. And then after she passed away is when like he was really anxious in the house when other visitors would come over. I wasn't afraid to have visitors over because he wasn't like, this was before he was really biting people, but he was anxious, and we would have him behind a gate and we'd have people come in, and you know, after like they were settled and in the kitchen and not walking through the door, he calmed down and we let him out and he was fine with them. And I mean, most obvious to me is the more we isolated him, the worse his anxiety got, but we just didn't know how to go about not isolating him and not having him bite people. Especially because before his last bite, which was July 2019, we had been isolating him from everyone for like 21 months, and that one was a fluke in the sense that like someone was where they weren't supposed to be. So we've been isolating him since like 2018, pretty much from everyone but the 10 people, and like he didn't used to be this anxious in new spaces. And I guess my biggest thing is I honestly don't know, because we haven't done it, whether he can be slowly introduced to someone else and get used to them over time, or if it's like just strange people. Because we haven't introduced him to anyone new. We haven't had anyone, well, really that we're like wanting to be introduced to my dog. So it's obviously even an issue in Chicago because, you know, you can't bring anyone new into the house. It's extra, like, it's just a lot of logistics. It's not, you just can't do anything with your dog. But I'm revisiting the, you know, addressing rather than like avoiding the issue, because it's gonna, I'm moving, but the more I think about it, how could I ever, if there's an emergency and there's no one to see him, if like I'm at school, so like that's fine with my schedule, but if I get a job, like, am I gonna be able to introduce a dog walker to him? And just logistically, it's scary to go to a new place and not know what I can do with him.
Okay. The 3 bites, because there was one to someone who thought they could win him over.
That was his last bite. That was by far the worst one. It was my oldest half-sister, and I don't see her often. She had never met him, and he was already like 6 years old. She doesn't live here. And it was bad. She is kind of a hippie, and she studies Reiki, and she could sense his pain of being isolated, and so she thought she could mentally Reiki him, and it was also my fault because I knew it was a terrible idea. I had him muzzled and I brought him out, and then I was like, it just escalated. I became unmuzzled, but there was a gate between them, and then she just stuck her hand over. But this was after like she had been staring at him for 5 minutes, and he was kind of like, not breaking eye contact, shaking, standing like this, and she was like, look, he likes me, he's looking at me, and I'm like, no, this is not like a good reaction, so I'm holding him like this. I didn't think there was, but she reached forward, and this was like, he bit her and wouldn't let go. So that was the only time he's ever had a bite like that. Other times it was like he jumped, lunged, nipped, and then was down, and this was like, I had to pull him off, so that was bad.
Okay, and can you walk me through the first 2 real quick?
Yes. I would just like to say there's more than 3. There's just 3 that were like bad.
Okay, how many total?
I'd say probably like 9 that I wrote down. 4 of those were like no broken skin or bruising. It was just like when we started noting him lunging and like going for people. One of those was the handyman in the building. That was the first one. There was one right before the one with my half-sister actually, where he bit someone at MedVet because he has physical therapists there, and as far as I know, he's never had an issue with them. They weren't supposed to unmuzzle him, but he's been going there for the past 2 years, and they do, so they feel comfortable with him unmuzzled. But another dog owner had come into the back, and he was on his leash, and they like crossed in a corner, and I didn't see it, I wasn't there. He only has 2 official bite records, and that was like, they told me it wasn't bad. They told me like he just washed it off and was fine, but.
The owner? Okay.
And that, like, obviously it was upsetting because he wasn't supposed to be unmuzzled around anyone, but.
Did they report that bite?
Yeah, they did.
Just because one of the 2? Okay.
Another one was, so 2015 he bit someone for the first time. Our dog died in December of 2016. December 2015 is when he bit someone for the first time.
That was the handyman one?
Yes, December of 2015. And then December of 2016, and there was nothing at all alarming in between that year. And then December of 2016, our older dog died. He was becoming more anxious with people coming in the house, but like at this point I wasn't afraid to have people around him or have him pet outside because he was fine with that. But like he was showing more anxious behaviors, but at this point I didn't think he was dangerous.
Okay.
He had been going to Call of the Wild, like this doggy daycare, for 3 times a week ever since 2014. And for doggy daycare and like training, and they always remarked on how he got along with all the dogs and all the people and all that. But then in December of 2016, so right after our other dog died, they didn't want him back because he kept charging at new people. He didn't bite anyone there, but he was charging at anyone he didn't know.
Like charging and barking?
No, he doesn't really bark. I mean, he barks, but he doesn't like, I don't know.
He doesn't like more vocalize, he just...
Yeah.
Okay.
Come here, buddy. So then in January of 2017, we started taking him to private sessions at Call of the Wild. But I went back to school and my parents didn't really keep that up. And we still didn't think it was like...
And that was for the behavior, or was that just for general obedience?
It was for the behavior, but as far as I know, we just like kept doing what he had been doing before, just in the sense of like having more control over him, which is always a good thing, but like I don't know what was different about it in comparison to the training he was having before, other than no other dogs or people. It was just him privately. Kind of in the same period, he started lunging at people on walks. Never bit anyone that way, but, and that behavior has actually ceased, but it went on for a few years there. Also, a few months after my dog died, we have like a main dog walker, and then within his business, there's a few other ones, and although this guy was there the most, other ones would show up and they would walk the dogs and everything was fine. But he started doing this anytime, but more extreme, a different dog walker would come. So since 2016, we've been limited to the one dog walker. And when I moved out of my parents' house, I moved like across the street because I needed to be where the dog walker was. So the dog walker's in the inner circle, but that's just like his behavior was more, you know, towards certain people.
Right.
And then in May of 2017, so a while after our first dog died, but like he had been showing, you know, anxious behaviors more and more and more, but he hadn't fighting people. We had a cousin who came over, and we weren't really letting him around guests at this point that he didn't already know. But I was putting him on his leash, I was putting on his muzzle, and I didn't realize she was coming around the corner to go to the bathroom, and she put her head down to say hi to him, and he bit her on the nose.
I'm sorry, what happened prior to that?
She like rounded the corner because she was in the kitchen visiting with my parents. I'm sitting right here, which is kind of like where his coat and leashes and things are. And I'm putting on his leash, and I was like getting his coat or something, and she was coming around the corner, and he was just sitting there, but I didn't have his muzzle on him yet. I didn't realize she was coming. And as she like turned the corner, she bent down to say hi to him, and he leapt up at her.
Okay. And this was someone who was not in the inner circle?
No, not in the inner circle. He's never showed any aggressive behavior towards like 10 people, ever. Doesn't matter if he was really injured or what was happening, he's never, towards those 10 people, has never shown any bad behavior. And he's like, that includes when he had like major spinal surgery and had to be like carried. And sometimes, I don't know, our other dog, when she was injured, she would get kind of nippy and...
Oh, sure, yeah, that's a deal.
But he, if it was these 10 people, wouldn't even do that, so.
Would the, and this person had like just walked in or been there, but you just weren't aware they were coming around the corner?
I wasn't aware they were coming around the corner. She had been there, but like he had never met her before.
Okay.
And we weren't like fully isolating him from new people, but we were if it was just like random, like obviously, I don't know, like he wasn't gonna see them really again, so like it wasn't like before where we'd let people come in and get settled and then let him out. We were more concerned at this point. But he wasn't like totally isolated. Like for example, like if my brother had a girlfriend who was around, like we would still introduce her to them and he wouldn't bite them. And then we had someone come after that, like immediately after that bite, specifically for his aggression. And was working with him, it was going well. He got a prong collar, which helped obviously with the lunging a lot. He had us stop muzzling him when we were outside of the building, walking him, because he thought it was making him more anxious, and I think he was right on that fact. I think the muzzle does make him more anxious, especially with other dogs. And we were working really, like I was really impressed with my parents for following like everything they were supposed to do, and we were doing that for about like 2 months, but then he needed his first back surgery, and we kind of had to stop for a while because he was on crate rest for like a month, and then basically in September we were ready to start up again, but our dog trainer passed away, and like right in September is when he was unmuzzled, being walked by the dog walker, and a lady was crossing the street. This is his first official bite record, and she bent down to pet him, and he bit her hand. That's the first official bite record.
And was that like a puncture bite, or was it like?
It was a punctured bite, like one. It wasn't. I mean, like I guess now everything I compare is to like the June 2019 bite, which was really bad, but it was like, didn't need stitches or anything like
Just
that.
plain, yeah.
They did call an ambulance because my dog walkers wanted to call an ambulance, which is fine, but the people in the ambulance said she was gonna be fine.
Mm-hmm.
That was his first official bite record, and after that, we were like, well, even if the unmuzzling him outside is making him less anxious, we can't risk it.
Yeah.
We started muzzling him again outside. And after that, so that was September 2017, is when we started literally isolating him from everyone but 10 people.
Okay.
And the other 2 bites happened not because we were trying to introduce him to people, but like they shouldn't have happened. There were scenarios where he wasn't supposed to be around these people.
Like someone just let him out, or?
Like in the physical therapy when someone came into the back that wasn't supposed to, or when my sister wasn't supposed to be near him.
Okay. How many of these bites were not in the home?
2.
Okay. The one at the vet clinic and the one with the dog walker?
Mm-hmm.
And the rest were in the home?
Mm-hmm. Besides the maintenance guy, but it was in the hallway outside the
Sure,
house.
so still within the vicinity of the home.
Yes,
Okay.
he's definitely worse about people coming into our space.
Okay. So we got handyman, hallway. We got with the dog walker. We got at the vet clinic, he was unmuzzled, they were walking him past by another dog owner. We have half sister, which is the worst one, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then we have, I'm trying to find a common thread amongst these things. I'm trying to decipher where is the behavior coming from, right? Because it's coming from somewhere. Now I have a guess, but it's the easy guess, and I want to make sure I can do this clearly. So just give me a quick rundown. Handyman, vet clinic.
Okay. Handyman, a year goes by, dog dies. He was like nipping people and lunging at people, but he hadn't bitten anyone. Like in leading up to his first bite in May,
Which is the dog walker one?
which was my cousin on the nose,
Oh, okay.
which is May 2017.
But
Then-
then she had last one that came in and then was surprised.
Around the corner.
You were getting them set up. Okay.
And then June of 2017 is when we were focusing on training him for aggression,
Mm-hmm.
which took a hiatus. Had surgery in July of 2017. In late September of 2017 is when he bit the woman on the walk.
Okay.
Then for 8 weeks after that, he went to a boarding training.
Mm-hmm.
Where she told us he was too unpredictable, and after that is when we totally isolated him, where we didn't even take any more chances.
Mm-hmm.
He had another surgery in July of 2018 for his back. In June of 2019 is when he bit someone at physical therapy, and in July of 2019 is when he bit my sister, half sister.
Okay, so I'm counting 6 there.
Okay, maybe 6. I'm not.
Because because one of your points was dog diet. So I'm trying to remember, was there a bite around the dog's death? Or was that just like are you just labeling that as like a timeline? Like this is like an important thing?
We thought his behavior got worse after that.
Sure.
His anxiety, not necessarily like because he started biting people right away, but because his anxiety, like he didn't have any anxiety up until he was 2 years old.
Mm-hmm.
We honestly, until more things, saw the handyman bite as being like a fluke of some kind because
Sure.
there was no aggression after that for a year or any time before that.
Mm-hmm.
And so after she died is when like we started putting him behind a gate when people came in until like he calmed down and then letting him out.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's like we started doing that less because he started lunging at people. He wasn't biting them, he was lunging at them. And it just like his anxiety got progressively worse.
Mm-hmm.
And we kind of used that as the marker of when it started.
Okay. Do you mind if I try to touch this guy?
Sure.
You can get the muzzle on.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna put with this. So go ahead and short, have your leash how you have it. Hey. Hey. tension there. But this is more like a bit of a stare.
Yeah, this guy's crazy guy.
Yeah, but then he disengages. And I didn't play. Is he okay with his injury? I don't want him shuffling around and then hurt himself.
Oh yeah, yeah.
That's fine. Okay. So, the reason why I need the information for the bite stuff is to decipher what's fueling everything.
I have way better than the thing I wrote you, like a timeline that I wrote yesterday. That's a lot more accurate and detailed.
Well, I don't need details. I just need instances.
Oh.
So, because we have handyman, right?
Mm-hmm. My cousin.
Cousin, which was the nose one.
Yeah.
Okay.
The lady on the walk.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
There was a big clinic and then physical therapy.
yeah.
Those are two instances, right?
No. I'm sorry. Okay, handyman. Cousin.
Okay.
Lady on the street.
Okay.
Med vet.
Mm-hmm.
And then my older sister. Maybe why I'm counting more is there's like instances in there that where he tried to bite someone, but we like literally intercepted it.
Okay. Well, was that on the leash?
Yeah. Not always. Like another cousin came over
Mhm.
and Wally was behind the gate. This was before more of the series, and he put over and
Yep.
Wally went for him and he just moved his hand, but like he was going to bite him. I
So
don't
he was
know.
reaching over but removed his hand?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then there was time where we were in our house in Colorado. Our old elderly neighbor was there who was like great with dogs, which I know like a lot of people say they're great with dogs. He's really great with dogs, but we still had him on the leash. And he lunged at him and was definitely gonna bite him, and I literally stuck my arm in his mouth. So I have a scar from that,
Mm-hmm.
but
Or was that inside or outside?
inside.
Okay. So he comes in and then he's on a leash. He goes to pet him. You body block.
Actually, he was already in the house, he was sitting down, Wally was downstairs, and I brought him up to take him outside,
Mhm.
and he was on a leash.
Mm-hmm.
And he seemed okay, like he wasn't doing any of this, we were just gonna walk outside, and then he just, I don't know how, he lunged at some point, and I just got my arm in there, I can't exactly remember how.
That's fine. And any other ones?
The problem is nothing that like ever got reported back to me. I wasn't always here, I was at school,
Mm-hmm.
but nothing that like resulted in serious injury. Either he lunged at people and tried to bite them or nipped them and nothing. I don't know.
This is all like on the leash, they're gonna walk or something?
No. The only person he's ever went for on a walk was
the
that
dog
lady.
walker.
Yeah.
Okay. Were these other attempts like in the house then?
In the house, all
Okay.
in the house.
Alright. So that makes more sense now. So, that's why, because I'm like, it made sense, but didn't make sense, but now it makes a lot more sense. Okay, definitely a lot of territorial biting here. Okay. And then a lot of these things are also on the leash. Alright.
Yeah.
The gate creates more territorial behavior because of the separation. So like when your half-sister reached over, you know, she was going into his space, and that, I would expect that to go. The other person kind of went down or pulled back out, right? Same thing, was going over a boundary. When you're coming up and he was on the leash, go take him outside. And the leash, it sounds like for this guy, really kind of heightens him a little bit. Because, you know, the lady with the dog walker, he's on the leash, walk with the dog walker, and then randomly goes on to touch him, he's caught off guard. Except so dog, you have 4 responses to stress: fight, flight, avoid, submission. Okay, his response is fight. He's like, oh, you caught me off guard, fight, right? Or you're coming into my space, fight. He's a very much fight response type of dog. So here, with all the stuff coming into the home, most likely territorial behavior. I definitely need an anxious dog here, from what I can see here. Why that happened in 2 years, whether it's in response to the dog's death or anything like that, it can happen. I've had other dogs in the past that I've worked with where the other dog in the home passed, and they just noticed a shift for whatever reason, So changes in behavior can happen at any point in their life. Usually it's around 6 months to a year, but 2 years actually doesn't come as a surprise to me, because 6 months, a year, and 2 years are kind of pivotal moments in a dog's life. 6 months is terrible 2's brain, teenager body. 1 year is teenager brain, adult body. 2 years is adult dog, is how I look at it. So at either of those points, whenever anybody has any issues like their dog becoming aggressive or something, or reactive, it's usually around those points. And also, very common, that anybody before the behavior, right, is in the dog's circle of trust. And anybody outside of that, after that point, is not trusted, or the dog is more suspicious of. Super common, happens all the time, okay? So if I get a puppy at 6 months, and they're becoming aggressive, the owner will say at 6 months, puppies start becoming aggressive towards people or dogs. All the dogs I met before, all the people I met before, perfectly fine. It's just everybody after that. And I go, yep, it makes perfect sense. It's super common. I think it's unusual there.
Yeah, the only difference is he got accustomed to his physical therapist, and my sister's fiance, who he met in 2018 after a lot of the bad bites. We didn't know what we were going to do about it, and for some reason he just liked him right away.
So off the bat, no issues with him?
Yeah, so that's like the one. Everyone else was before he started biting.
Sure. And the physical therapist and the fiance, or these are people he saw consistently?
The physical therapist, yes, and he definitely grew accustomed to them, because I don't think they unmuzzled him for a while. My sister's fiance, is literally the first time he saw him that he decided he liked him. So.
Okay, so when someone enters the home for a dog's brain, it triggers suspicion. So if someone knocks on the door, let's say the dog loves people. Someone knocks on the door, we usually hear barking and all that stuff. And then when you open the door, the dog just goes to I love people, right? Because they love people. So when they hear the knock, they don't know what's causing the knock. They don't know it's actually a human. They just think this is a suspicious noise. But when you open the door and they see the person, oh, we love people, or I love people, they go from suspicion to social, right? Is here with all the bites within the home and stuff all sound like boundary and or territorial related. It could also start from an anxiety, because if he's already under stress and you add in someone coming into his personal space, it adds more stress, so that he's going into fight response, or he's more inclined to go into fight response. When it comes to having a dog on a leash and doing introductions that way, leashing a dog, especially with a harness, escalates tension. It creates more agitation. So in protection training, we put dogs in harnesses. So in protection training, we're training a dog to be aggressive to humans, but we're going to control it. So we have the dog in a harness because we want to be able to more easily create agitation and tension and frustration towards the agitator. So when the dog starts lunging and barking, we would reward that by praising them and or letting them go for a bite. And we start to mold and shape that. So here, when we have a dog and we're holding them back on the leash or whatever, because we're trying to prevent them from lunging or whatever, that's actually incentivizing them to bite more. Okay, and it's super common, a lot of people do it. A lot of people unintentionally make their dogs protection dogs, in the sense that when someone comes over, they put the dog on the leash and they'll hold the dog back. And the dog's going ballistic, and then when the person comes in, they'll let the dog go. And that just rewards the behavior of lunging and barking. Some dogs become aggressive, some dogs don't care, they just have really bad manners. And they're overstimulated or overexcited. So I think the bites here that were kind of deemed as unpredictable are more so, I think they are. I think they're just all centered around mostly in the home or on the leash. So if the dog walker is on a leash, if the vet clinic is on a leash, and someone was passing by, right? So that's all stemming from most likely leash tension and reactivity. But what happened was if he's passing by the person and there's tension on him, or he feels suspicious or something, or he's under stress, he's going to direct it to the nearest thing, which would be whoever will pass him to the vet clinic. And when it comes to the dog walker, well, that person reached into his personal space. So I'm like, yeah, that's what I would expect. So when it comes to handling this stuff, is the tricky part is going to be getting them to a point where you would be able to trust them with like a new dog walker. That's the tricky part, because the variable is the dog walker. Are they actually listening to the instructions? Are they actually doing things like you've instructed them to do? You know, because people will think, I'm great with dogs. Dogs always love me until they reach that one dog that doesn't. So when it comes to having people come over and like having guests come over and not being worried about what's going to happen, that's actually easier because you're going to be present. And there's an exercise. It's very structured how we go about that. And in regards to will you be able to trust them again, that's a you thing. So when it comes to aggression, when we get attempts like that or actual bites, it creates distrust, right? That's why we withdraw. Also, we don't want to risk exposing the dog because if he gets too many bites on his record, unfortunately, it's no good for him. Is trust comes with confidence in what we're doing is being effective, but also the confidence of if things go south, I have the tools to stop it and get the control back. So that's how that kind of works. And then it's exposure. So if we've withdrawn, and that does, either way, if you would have been proactive about socializing them, that could work against you. And if you would have been withdrawn, or if you withdraw, that can also work against you. Because if you're trying to proactively socialize him to see to get him over this hump, and he's attempting to bite people, and nothing is there to correct the behavior, he's still able to practice the behavior. There's nothing to deter it. But when we withdraw, now he's not getting any exposure to people. That he's going to be more suspicious. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So, and this happened like with COVID. I had clients with completely social dogs, loved having people come over. Then they quarantined for 6 months, and then the first guest they had over, the dog bit. Because the dog's like, we've had nobody over for 6 months.
Yeah.
It's completely out the norm. So the good news is it can always be worked with, regardless of what you've done or what has been done. Regardless of how many bites the dog has on the record, like there's something that can be done. It's just how far we progress. It's contingent on the case. It's dependent on how much work you put into it, how much you try to expose him and socialize him as opposed to withdrawing. Does he try anything that we have the ability to correct it? So we learn that that's not an appropriate response. So when I get my dogs that are like obviously aggressive, that's actually easier to work with because it's right there, right? But with something like this, I'm more than positive. It's all territorial stuff. It's a little bit harder because we're trying to fish it out. Okay, so then if we don't see it, that's great. But then if we don't see it, you don't know how to address it. So with what you're needing after your move, right? Because the main thing's going to be he's going to be seeing new people, right? He's going to be handled or need to be handled by new people. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Anything else?
I guess I kind of have just like, obviously it would be great if I could have him unmuzzled and he would be friends with everyone, but that's not really my expectation. It'd be great if I could have people over and I didn't think he was going to bite them, or if, I could take him somewhere with a friend and I didn't think I was like, watching, protecting her from him or whatever. I guess, obviously, I don't want to invite people, but my very last resort is I'd like to introduce him to one person who is going to be in DC, who she's going to be here over the summer, and so I just have one person
to try to.
Yeah, I obviously want it to be more than one person, but if that's not happening, I just having one other person I know I could call on in case anything happens or so.
So the good news with that is I can teach that one person how to approach things. Okay, so like here, we get dogs like this guy that can only be boarded here. And we have equipment here, like we have things like this to protect us. We have special gloves, we have special leashes, we have all these tools here. That in case the dog blows up, it doesn't matter, we can still handle the dog. And my staff is taught on how to approach them. So as to prevent or work around, anybody being potentially bitten. For the most part, like here, the only person who's actually been bitten is me. Because like I'm very wary of like my employees. If I see a dog that's too dangerous, I would handle the dog, right? So that actually is good, because then in DC we would have someone who's been educated on how to handle him. So the way I would approach this, because I really feel like this is all centered around territorial and or boundary type behavior. I don't think he touched sensitive. The only place that he got super sensitive was his hindquarters when he started flipping around. But then when I kept touching his hindquarters, he eventually just sat there and looked at me like he didn't care. Okay?
Yeah, sometimes because he has hip dysplasia too. So
yeah,
his physical therapist, sometimes he's reactive when you touch certain areas.
Sure. That's why I was poking and prodding. I'm trying to see, does he have a spot where he doesn't feel comfortable? Or he feels sensitive and or vulnerable to trigger something. But even like when he quieted down and he looked at me, it wasn't even a stare. It was just kind of like, what are you doing? And then I continued to touch him. Even when he got kind of flighty, I continued to touch him. And at no point did he try to escalate. Other dogs, we try to touch them right away, they blow up and they're like back off. Whether it's being reactive and or actively being aggressive to get us to back off. So that's the whole reason I'm doing this touch thing. So I feel like, aside from the thing that happened at the veterinary clinic and the dog walker, a lot of this stuff is in the home and territorial.
Yeah, all of it.
Yeah. So that's the what the good news about that is now we have a context, and when we know context, we can work around things. So like I have a dog that I'm working with that the owner's thought was human aggressive. Okay. Human aggression is its own deal. What happened was the dog was resource guarding a bone. So anytime he bit someone, it was always around a bone. But it was people trying to take his bone. So they thought it was human aggression. And like, well, that's not human aggression, that's resource guarding. That's resource aggression. Which makes it easier, because that means when we know there's a resource around that the dog has in its possession, we can predict that dog's gonna become aggressive. Right? So it allows us to work with that. So that's why I was trying to really push on figuring out and getting details of what were all the instances, because I'm trying to figure out where's the bulk of this stuff coming from. So all that to me makes sense. So I'm assuming before reaching out, you did research on me and how I train, tools I use. So I use eCollar, which is the best tool in my opinion. When we work with aggression, it's very effective because it's non-confrontational. The dog doesn't know where it's coming from. And we're able to, if needed, provoke aggression and correct it to teach the dog that is not an acceptable response. Okay? Now in a case like this, excuse me, get some water. In a case like this, I don't think, he's definitely a fight response kind of dog. He's definitely a fight response type of dog, American told me. Whereas other dogs tend to have like escalations. What I would do with this guy is, it's gonna sound like it's not related, but it's part of the process, is the first thing we have to, actually it is related, the first thing we have to cover is leash walking, okay? Now I don't mind if you walk him on a harness, if that's for some kind of physical reason.
Yeah, he can't have pressure on his spine.
Okay.
Because he has disc disease.
Gotcha. So, however, just be aware, and I get this is where things get tricky, is because harnesses provoke.
Yeah. No, he was definitely better behaved with a prong collar, but the vet told us we can't use it anymore.
So, if you were to ever trigger, where it becomes a problem, is that the harness tells him to be more aggressive, whereas the e-collar will tell him to not be aggressive.
Yeah, do you have to put pressure on the e-collar, or is it just all electronic?
So there would be nothing connected to it.
Then that's fine.
Yeah. There would be, because there has to be some kind of aversive to deter the behavior.
Yeah.
Okay. It's a muscle contraction. And I mean, it does have to be fitted correctly, but if the issue is putting pressure on his neck because of the collar.
It's just like the pulling up and the like manipulating his spine like that.
Gotcha.
But no, just having something on his neck is fine.
Okay. Is that, it's just a contraction.
Mm-hmm.
We can use this. It's just, if he triggers, it might be a little bit more difficult to settle him. Because the harness is telling him to become aggressive, whereas the e-collar is telling him to not become aggressive. The way I would approach this is, we would do 2 classes on leash walking, okay? That has to happen for any behavior work to start. Because the leash walking teaches them how the e-collar works, and it helps teach you how the e-collar works, okay? Because it's something that I would assume you do multiple times a day. Most people walk their dogs 3 times a day to go potty or whatever. So every time you walk them, you're like essentially training. So you're training yourself and you're training him. So you're getting more comfortable with it. After the first 2 classes, and also those 2 classes will help with any leash reactivity, whether towards humans or dogs or whatever it is. That's all based off of that.
Yeah, he doesn't really lunge anymore except certain dogs in the neighborhood who I know exactly who they are, but we thought, because he hasn't been around any dogs since our other dog died, we thought he was dog reactive because he was lunging at dogs on walks. But then my sister got a puppy and during the pandemic, and we all lived together in Colorado, and he likes dogs.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a good, pleasant surprise.
Sure. So then the leash walking is the foundation for what we're going to build everything off of.
Yeah.
The 3rd class, if someone knocks on the door, what does he do?
Charges at the door.
Okay, we have to address that, okay? Once we address that, then you can start having people come over, okay? The next thing would be addressing, so we address the front door, and then we have to address people coming in and then making contact with him. Because I didn't see anything here, okay? So it's not something that I can recreate here, because a lot of times we can do it here and the owner just applies it at home, because his problem has been within the home.
Yeah.
And then we see how he takes to that. I don't know how that's going to pan out. But the theory here is, if he charges the door and I shut down the territorial behavior, there's nothing technically to fuel the territorial aggression that we're seeing. Okay, because we're telling him, cut the crap, it's not necessary, just chill. So if he's chill, like this, the idea is I wouldn't see anything. Okay, can we? Yes. But that's where all the other stuff comes into play. So like, let's say we do the back and we get him to back off the door, he's not being territorial, then we progress to, okay, someone comes in and we're making contact with them, we're not seeing any signs of tension, we're not seeing any signs of aggression and stuff, he's just sitting there and he's passive, he's chill like that, he's letting us touch him. Then we would go to, okay, well if you're trying to socialize him, socializing doesn't mean he has to be touched. Socializing or socialization is you're in the presence of other people and or things, and you're not charging them, and you're not going after them, okay? Now, the issue with these guys is he's got that special muscle, right? Is what we would do, or what I would do is if someone came over and we determined, hey, you can start pressing the touch sensitivity, and people are coming over and they're petting them, we usually pair it with food to create a positive association. However, if he acts up, he gets corrected. If he doesn't do anything, he gets rewarded. So then he has kind of an incentive, like, okay, well, if I do this, I'm gonna get promoted. If I don't do this, I also get a reward, right? And also to help build trust with people, but it's not necessary to use food, but we do it to balance things out. He may not even care about it.
Oh, he is so food motivated.
Okay.
Which is why I think his physical therapist has such good, because he gets food for everything he does there. So.
Yeah. So we would take advantage of that. The issue with the food in that muzzle is trying to get it into the muzzle.
Yeah.
Okay. So that would most likely be something that's handled by you. Usually we would have the person that's doing the touching give the food to help tie together the positive association, but you can do it too. Now, the issue is, a lot of the stuff that people, like we still have to watch certain contexts. So like if we did all this stuff and he's making great progress, and you're like, you know what, Jesse, he's not charging at people and he's like going up to people to say hi or whatever, and someone reaches over a fence to touch him, that's again, you're probably going to see something because that's the territorial bite. That's them going into his boundary.
Yeah.
You know, but that's just ignorance on people's part. Like I would never touch a dog on the other side of the fence because I'm expecting I'm gonna get bit, regardless if it's a golden retriever or whatever. Okay, and I've had people who have tried to pet a dog, say it was like a sweet, looking golden retriever, and then they get bit. Like yeah, because you're going into that dog's territory, and the dog's protecting the territory. So it would be, of course, telling people like, hey, like ignore him, giving strict instructions like just leave him alone or whatever. If he's on the couch, like not going over and trying to put their face in his face. But all those bites made sense. Like when you said like your cousin, right? Like put her face down by his face.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that's very confrontational for a dog. Even for humans, if someone comes up to you like this and you don't know them, you're kind of like, whoa, right? But we don't bite. That's not our language. Biting is a dog's language.
Yeah. That's
how they correct each other. So he's just, essentially those are like correction bites. Like, hey, back off, don't touch me, or don't get in my face. The other ones were reactive bites. Like at the vet clinic, when he was on the leash and the guy walked by. That's most likely reactivity or reactive based bite. So, the tricky part, of course, is when you travel, he's going to be unsettled again. It's not uncommon because of the change. My dogs, they're from Texas, so when I moved up here from Texas, they were super anxious for like the first couple of weeks. But then through structure and discipline and exposure, they're fine now. But it was a 180 because I was a quiet town in Texas, and then we moved to busy Chicago. So with this guy, with the changing environment stuff, I would expect the stress levels to spike. What would help de-escalate things would be the remote training, transferring the heel, toxing the heel over there, which helps create some consistency in terms of structure and rules for him. And then you just not recreate, but you would just apply what you learned with people coming into the home here, to people coming into the home over there. Okay? How long you can take them to build trust with someone, I don't know. Okay? Because the other thing is, it happens. Like I've had clients with dogs for 5 years, never any issues, and then one day it bites somebody.
Yeah.
It happens. And that's what I would call like a fluke moment, like you had mentioned before. But when it starts to become like this is not so much fluke. These are intentional, but there is a context zone, territorial. So it would be if you need a dog walker or something like that, you would have to train them how to work with them. The problem with most dog walking companies is that it can either be a revolving door, if it's like a bigger company, or if it's like a personal or private company. Sometimes they don't like using the tool of the e-collar, or if it's like yours where they had it was like one main person, but on occasion it might be another dog walker depending on the schedule. Everybody would have to be kind of trained to the same degree in order to prevent any kind of instances. But if someone comes in and goes like, oh my god, I love French, look at this Frenchie, they go and come in like that, it's gonna be a problem. But that's not him, that's people. Okay? So in terms of what you're trying to achieve here, I mean obviously it's stopping or controlling the aggression or you kind of figure out how to an answer for that. Anything else that you're trying to do with this guy?
No, I don't think there'll ever be a time where I'm comfortable having him unmuzzled just in
Sure.
public. For his safety, I don't want anything to happen to him, but like...
Yeah, when it came to like the muzzle being like, more anxious, that doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Because he has to learn how to deal with that one way or another. So the muzzle is perfectly fine. I have no problem with it.
Well, now it's been 5 years, so he's a little more used to it.
Yeah. No, it's perfectly fine. Muzzles are meant to, protect not just the dog or the human, but the dog from if they get too many bites, that's it. So yeah, the muzzle's perfectly fine. But if you kind of want that peace of mind of not having to worry about this again to do something, even though he is muzzled, that's not a problem.
Yeah, like I'd love for the muzzle just to be like an extra precaution and not to think because I'm stopping him from biting.
Right. And that's something like, let's say if you're gonna, go to work or something, and the dog walker's gonna come over, like, he could be muzzled until the dog walker comes, they walk and they come back and they can remove it when they leave, and this way he's not sitting there with the muzzle on for like 8, 10 hours or whatever. There's a few answers around that, because that muzzle was meant for, well, I mean, I don't know if he can drink from it, but, you know, he can open his mouth and all that stuff, pant appropriately. Like, he should be able to wear that for an extended period of time, and not pose an issue.
We
So,
never had him muzzled, like, for, usually it's just when he's walking, but he can be muzzled for other times.
yeah, because I mean, other cases that I work with, like if you have people come over for 3 hours, unless you put them away, right, for your peace of mind, like you can be muzzled for 3 hours. We get dogs here that we have to have muzzled 24/7
Yeah.
because, you know, we're just learning about them, we're getting a feel for them, they're getting a feel for us, you know, and the muzzle we use, they can eat and drink water normally, or as normal as possible. But with this, because he's a Frenchie, he has to have a special type of muzzle.
Yeah.
So his isn't designed the same way. But technically, he should be able to wear that for an extended period of time, and it doesn't pose any issue. So in terms of like the time and cost and stuff, I'd probably put you at around 6 to 9 classes, because I'm really just focusing on the behavior. It doesn't really seem like you need to run anything else. There's also stationary control, which could come in handy for when people come over, so it's added peace of mind of like, okay, he's going to be over there and he's not going to move. So as long as this human isn't come over and try to encroach in this person's space, there shouldn't be any issue. But the biggest problem here that I'm seeing is that he just hasn't been corrected. And with the e-collar, the correction is at the press of a button. We don't have to worry about like the physicality, like the prong collar with this spine and everything like that. I worked with lots of different dogs with different issues, heart murmur, seizures, medical conditions and stuff like that. He would be the first, if I'm remembering correctly, that's had some kind of spinal issue. Okay, so if you talk to your veterinarian, they'll probably tell you not to use the collar because they don't understand the technology. Not so much like medically they know there's going to be a problem, but that's going to have to be something that you'll have to think on.
I've done research on it, and as far as I can tell, it shouldn't cause problem with his discs. And he has like other things that like get put on him because he goes to physical therapy and they do laser and they do like pulsing and things that go on his neck. And
What's the pulsing?
it's like an assisi loop, and it's to like pulses his muscles to relax them, and it goes around his neck and it goes around
Yeah,
his...
it's an e-collar. Technically, it sounds
Kind
like
of, like it's medical purposes, but it sounds like it does kind of like
Yeah,
a lesser version of the same thing.
So an e-collar is just a miniaturized pen unit.
Yeah.
It's the same technology that they use on humans. So if he's had that, then that's nothing. Then I think then we're fine.
Yeah.
So the only thing obedience-wise that he really needs to know is the heel. That's for any that'll prevent any reactivity towards dogs or humans or whatever. Potentially stationary control, which is like go to your bed and don't move. And that's just if people come over and you want added peace of mind of like I want to have my guest come over, but not have to worry about what he's doing. Okay.
We were doing that for a while when we were working with the first trainer, and it was going well.
Yeah.
But then things happened, and we started just removing him from the situation.
Yeah.
But we had like people come over and eat, and he had to stay in his space. And
Correct. So that has value there in terms of like having guests come over, and then addressing the territorial behavior. So I would do, the way I see this progressing is 2 classes on heel. By the 3rd class, we're working on the behavioral stuff and people coming in. The 4th class, people coming in, touch sensitivity, see how he does. We can even try to do boundary stuff where you have him on the other side of the fence and we can try to make contact to see if he gives us anything. And we can correct it if he does. We have stationary control and really just kind of teaching you how to properly introduce him to people. I can work with your friend that would come over so that I can educate them on how to approach things. And then how many classes they would need is really just depending on them and you. So I think 9 gives you enough. So if they need more than 1 class, it's there available too. Because I'm really just focusing on giving you answers on what to do once you move. Mm-hmm. Okay? And there's only a couple things that have to happen obedience-wise. The leash walking potentially plays command. Otherwise, everything else is a lot of education. And saying that, yep, this is a territorial dog, and so we're getting all the things that we're seeing. The collar that he would need, how much does this guy weigh?
He weighs 40 pounds.
Okay, hey, that's all little dude.
Yeah.
So what I'd probably do is I'd put him on the Dr. Black edition. It's meant for 70 pounds and over. The only reason why I'm recommending that is just in case if he were to kick into aggression, I'm not worried about am I going to be able to stop him. It's the highest powered collar. It's perfectly safe to use. I could use on my 8-pound Chihuahua, he'd be perfectly fine. It's just more output with less lower numbers in it. Whereas with the lower powered collar, he'd need a higher number to equal or match the level of power. So it's there just in case. That one runs around 325-ish, I believe, with tax. They last a really long time. Most common thing is the battery dies, which is replaceable, or you can send it to Dogfood or to Fix, and Maria will send you all that information.
Okay.
The issue that we're going to have here is, where are you located?
I'm downtown.
Okay, so you're in the city of Chicago.
Yeah.
Okay. I had to change things because of COVID. So I used to do home to home, and I used to go downtown, South Loop, and Gold Coast, all that stuff.
Yeah.
Then COVID happened, and then everybody was like, nobody come over, right? So then I started training at Oz Park. So now my business model is people come to me, and I work outside of the park. But your problem is in home, okay? So you have a couple of options. One is I still do home to home, it's just more expensive. It's at a higher rate now, because now it's pulling me from where I'm usually located.
Yeah.
And then I go back. So it's also limited availability, and also it just pulls me from my normal routine. But in your case, if it was like, if I could recreate it here, then I'll say, cool, we can work here, not a problem.
No, I think it should be at home.
Yeah.
Even with the escalated price, I just think that's gonna make the most sense.
Yeah. And because I've been sending in my other trainer Enrique and doing visits, but he'd only be able to help you so far. He's not had a case like this. I do this stuff all the time. It's nothing out of the ordinary for me. Otherwise, I could send Enrique, and what would happen is I would tell him what to do. And he watches my videos. He does his own research and studies on the side when he's not working here. And he would still be doing the program like I would. It's just, it's him, and he's learning as he's going, aside from what I tell him. And he would be at my normal rate at Oz Park, but he would travel to you. Otherwise, if you absolutely want to work with me, it would be at a higher rate, but it would be in your home. Okay? Any questions about this stuff?
No, I mean, I think I'd prefer to work with you. I don't want to pull you away from.
Yeah, no, it's fine. But that's what it buys more. I have another client that's in home right now, but that's why they're paying more.
Yeah. I'm willing to give it everything we can. So.
Okay. And you're leaving in August?
I leave in August. He doesn't come till October, but yeah.
Okay. So, when I can start with you is depend on your availability.
I'm extremely available. I'm
Okay.
working from home. So.
Okay. So that makes things a lot easier. Because there's been people that have been waiting a month or so, but it's because their evenings or weekends, and my schedule is busiest evenings and weekends. Daytime is a little bit more straightforward because most people are doing 9 to 5. So then that works out too. So what will happen is, if you know you're good to go, you can turn around and email Maria and say, hey, get me started.
Okay.
As soon as you sign your training form, she knows you're serious, okay? Because a lot of people just kind of go back and forth, and then all these other people are booking and they're taking up time. So once their training form is submitted, then she knows, okay, you're serious. I would put you at 9 classes. That gives us enough time to cover all the stuff, work with your friend, do all the inside stuff, and also cover more control if needed. But we're really gonna push the behavioral stuff, okay? And then she'll send the information on the make and model in terms of the collar that you'll need. And then she'll handle all the scheduling stuff. I don't know what my schedule looks like, it changes every day. So she'll handle all that with you, okay? Any other questions or concerns?
No. I actually, just the anxiety in general, do you think that's related to his other thing? I mean, I know it's related because he's anxious, but is by like addressing his behavioral issues gonna help with the fact that he's anxious all the time?
So it can help him. So if I can't make him unanxious,
Makes sense.
right? But I can help him handle anxiety better. And actually, that's a good question. We may see what's the word? Incline or increase in anxiety in the beginning because of the stress of the collar. It's normal. Okay, but that's actually what helps them handle anxiety, because we're exposing them in a controlled context and showing them how to handle it. So that's why I was like, I can't make them unanxious, but we can at least teach them how to handle it.
Yeah.
Now, what you may see is that he'll recover from anxiety much more quickly. You know, so like right now he's been sitting there shaking for a bit, and that could also be because the floor is a little bit cold. But it didn't take him too long to recover. Okay. But that's how that will work. Okay. Is that we may see an increase in the beginning, and then over time it'll start to come down and recover faster. Okay. Anything else?
No, that's it.
So you can turn around and email Maria if you'd like, and she'll get you started. Otherwise, you can she'll email you.
Okay.
And then if you wait for her to contact you, don't to be like a 2 to 3 day turnaround just because it's so busy.
I know, I spoke with her. She's so nice.
Yeah, thank you. So she's trying to get through everything quickly,
Yeah.
and you know we're changing things here to kind of streamline the process a bit more. But yeah, she'll get in touch with you and get you all set up.
Okay.
Okay. Awesome. Anything else?
No, that's it.
All right, so I'll help you out here.